Maybe if I was ready to spray and I panned the corner and I saw that he couldn't see me, I would have rather have had the element of surprise coming right up towards his back and grabbing the gun than getting around him to spray him in the face.
The information in this podcast is for entertainment and educational purposes. Our informational content cannot address all dangerous situations and cannot guarantee your survival or prevent injuries when the unexpected happens. The decision to carry a firearm, either for recreation or for personal defense, carries the risk and potential for injury and or death. Therefore, it is advised that you seek out and acquire proper training before using a firearm or any firearm-related product.
What are some self-defense techniques?
What would happen if there was a global internet outage?
What should I do if I hear shots ringing out?
Or what I should do if there's a major terrorist attack?
What should I have? What's the best?
What should I do?
What does that look like?
What would you recommend? Is there anything I could do?
All right, guys, family, team, people, welcome back to Dangerous Questions. This week, we're focused more on some bigger picture events. I think that a lot of people are asking these types of questions, which is good. So we'll get into it. We'll provide a little clarity. Again, you're going to get my perspective on some of these things, and some of them are a high-level perspective. I'm going to get into detail on some of them, but I think at least it's going to educate you guys on what can I be doing in an end-of-the-world scenario. You know, some of these are in that vein or in that subject category. So it's at least worth tuning into, hanging on, and listening to some of the things we're going to break down. Thank you for being here. This is Dangerous Questions, an Ironclad original. Let's get into it. The first dangerous question is, I've saved some money. That's good. I want to invest into protecting my family in case of a major disaster or black swan scenario. It's just the end of the world scenario that's hard to predict. I mean, I don't know why black swan's the thing, whatever. So that's the scenario that he's asking about. Do you think it's better to outfit your home with protective measures or build a small bunker? Okay. First and foremost, you guys have heard me talk about this before. You know, we need to default to our inner capabilities, our heart, you know, what our mind is doing for this, the peace that we're going to be able to have through the turmoil, our faith that we're going to be able to apply, trusting in God's plan for each one of these things that unfolds is first and foremost. If I look at these two options, I'm going to cross the bunker off immediately. I don't care about a bunker, you know, burying myself somewhere, sitting in one place for a long period of time. Like, look, if it gets that bad, where else can I apply a selfless service to the world, right? If it's really that bad, there's going to be other people hurting and probably need some extreme care. And whatever, black swan, you can't predict it. So I'm going to have a level of faith that God is going to allow me to do what I need to do to prevail in that scenario. I am absolutely, and not to say that any type of bunker out there, I'm sure I'd be like, well, this is really cool. And, you know, it's nice to have, and you have the funds to do it. And it's an extra piece. It's an extra layer that's way outside of the average person and what we want to accomplish. I'm going to tell you to invest into your home, invest into yourself, invest into what you have on you every day, invest in what you have in your vehicle, invest in those protective measures at your home to keep yourself and your family safe. You know, that is really where we need to be thinking of, you know, how are we applying a sense of peace or a sense of calm in this type of end of the world scenario? I mean, you're bringing up family. Listen, guys, if you have a family, if you have people that rely on you, the biggest asset that you could bring to them is peace and calm and clarity and confidence that no matter what happens, you're going to be able to work through it. If you're toiling in this world and you're nervous about things imploding right here and now, and your solution is to go build a bunker, and yet you're still uneasy about everything that's happened and nervous, and all you do is focus and fixate on it, you're not bringing peace to your family. They're just like, oh, dad's crazy. He built a bunker and he's really nervous about all this stuff. Maybe we should be worried. I'm not bringing value and peace and health to my family. I need to make sure that they are healthy mentally and say, look, guys, we got whatever we're going to go through. Let's do some small things. Let's train. Let's make sure we have a level of expectation and training so that we can mitigate these things that pop up into our lives at home, while we're traveling, whatever the case may be. So I'm going to pick the protective measures around the house for this type of scenario. Hopefully that helps. And again, it's a great question. All right, guys, next question is a video submission. Let's see what it is.
I'm a pretty prepared person, but I feel like a blind spot is what would happen if there was a global internet or cellular outage from a cyber attack. What is your suggestion for comms that are worth investing in?
Okay, thanks for the question. And feeling like you're a pretty prepared person goes right along with what I just spoke about. And it's having that level of confidence that you could apply if something like this does happen. You know, I speak about it a lot, but we had an earthquake here in Virginia Beach at one point, and all the comms shut down. You couldn't get in touch with anybody, couldn't text, couldn't call, nothing. So it's likely that we have to understand and deal with that scenario. So we have a cellular outage, we have some type of cyber attack. Put yourself in that scenario right now. Phone goes out, can't use it, Wi-Fi's down, can't get in touch with anybody, nothing goes out. All right, what's going to change? You know, my first question to you and everybody else is, do you have a no comms plan? If you truly do have a family or people that you care about or people that you think you're going to need to get in touch with, what does the no comms plan look like? And I honestly think that with a little bit of effort, actually probably less effort than it would take to go find some type of a satellite option, and I'll talk about that in a second. But it doesn't take much to come up with a no comms plan. And what do I mean by that? You know, if I have somebody living in New England that I really care about, and I think that something could occur where we don't have any ability to get in touch with each other, I care about them deeply, I want to make sure I know that they're doing okay, how do I solve this issue? Well, it could be as simple as, well, we're going to travel to a certain point and meet at a certain location. We're going to meet at this 7-Eleven. This is the meetup point. We're going to meet there. If all comms are broken and it really is an end of the world scenario, we're going to meet at that point and we're going to wait for 3 days at that point and then have a secondary spot. If nobody meets there, we're going to go to another one. That's a very basic way to understand it, but it's at least a no comms plan. I can't get in touch with you. I'm going to keep trying. If my phone comms come up, well, great. Then I'll use them. But if not, what's my no comms plan? I think your no comms plan is more important about what you're going to do to get in touch with the people that you love than actually having other comms. So let's say you put a little effort into that and then you go that route and you have somewhat of a no comms plan. You've shared it with your family. They knew what to expect. Hey, we're in town. Our kids are at daycare. We don't send our kids to daycare, but if you did, that's a scenario we did think about in the past. If we're both working, our kids are at daycare, oh my goodness, that's the first place we need to be able to find out, are our kids okay? So no comms plan, going right to the daycare. Are our kids okay? Can we link up there? Her and I meet at the daycare or on and around the property. Things like that are going to continue to come up in your mind. Think about them, and then you can apply them to your life, to your unique lifestyle. Second one is, what comms do we actually look for? Now, I will tell you, since having the iridiums, there's been a huge evolution in satellite communications. There are a lot of private companies now offering satellite comms. So just like anything else that we go out there and do the research for, you know, you want reputability. Obviously, expense is going to be another factor. You know, are funds an issue to you? If funds are not an issue, well, I would find a reputable, quality offering that gave you a satellite package that you could take with you anywhere in the world and be able to link up to a satellite quickly and effectively. Now, making sure that your other members of your family have that same capability. That's a very easy way to say, look, if you've got disposable income, if you have funds put aside for this, go get a satellite communications. I mean, it's not a bad thing to have. I mean, if you're out in a boat, you could use it. If you're traveling with low service, you could use it. There are some pretty cost-effective options out there now that can be used, and they're not as extreme as what they used to be with the iridium. You know, nobody could use an iridium back in the day. It was like the military and government, and that was it. But it's since expanded a little bit. Hopefully that helps create a little bit of clarity on your question. So thank you for asking that. Comms are important. Apply them. Come up with a no comms plan. All right, next question. I own a four-wheel drive SUV, and I'm interested in making some upgrades to make it more durable and able to perform in hazardous conditions? What accessories or upgrades should I start with? This is a fun question for me because I just bought a Toyota Tundra TRD Pro and I loaded it out because it was a lot of fun to do, but I also did want a vehicle that was capable, something that I could rely on in these types of scenarios. You see people driving around with recovery boards, all these off-road packages, and you can say whatever you want about it, the intentions of the person driving the vehicle, fine. But I've been stuck multiple times in my life. I've also had to go get people out of multiple situations. And maybe that's the lifestyle that I live. I expose myself to more of those environments. But it is really nice to have that capability. So I didn't want an active truck right here and now that I could pull somebody out or get myself unstuck. I could apply a scenario that we were in Afghanistan. There was a scenario where we were stuck worse than I've ever been stuck in my entire life. And it took everything that we had, every shovel, everything we could shove under the tires, every winch was being utilized. We were winching to obstacles. We were winching to each other. Both vehicles were stuck. We had to inch our way through some really, really, really challenging situations. So I know what it's like to be in these hazardous environments and then need the right equipment. First and foremost, I always go to tires, and this is with any single vehicle out there. It is literally what holds your vehicle to the road. So your vehicle's capability is a whole other story. How much money you spent on your car, your vehicle, your truck, what type of capabilities of it, what's the reliability of it. That's a separate story. But what you have control over is what tires you have on your car, truck, or SUV. That is never going to be an area where I skimp. That is never going to be an area where I spend a little bit of money or take a shortcut. I literally go by the most expensive or reliable tires that I can. And they go hand in hand. When you start doing the research, you realize that the most expensive tires are the most reliable. Michelin, Goodyear, BF Goodrich. These guys that have been doing this for years at this point. I am going to go find a tire for the performance that I'm looking for. Are you looking for an off-road capability? Are you looking for strictly on-road? When I look at my truck, that's an off-road vehicle. I want to make sure that I can do both well. And again, this is the pros and cons with understanding what rubber to put on your vehicle is that what are you specifically looking for? If you're only focused on off-road, well, then you're going to have a really low on-road performance. If you're looking on-road performance, you're looking at low off-road performance. So there is a balance. I personally went with a tire that's going to balance both really well, siding a little bit on the off-road because I'd rather know that I can get out of those situations and the off-road tire can perform on the road, but I just don't have great gas mileage. Anyway, point being, invest into the rubber that's on the car. That's the first thing that I'm going to tell you to do for your SUV. Buy something that you can rely on and then have a spare. Know how to get to your spare. Blowouts are not uncommon. And usually when you're in a dynamic scenario, what's one of the first things that's going to happen is you're going to blow out a tire. You're going to hit a curb. You're going to do something dynamic and you're going to need to replace it. I like to make sure I know that I have a full-size spare and I know exactly that the jack system is going to work the way I need it to, even in a dynamic environment. This is something that I didn't really put much thought into until I really started to assess my truck. But my spare right now is underneath on a daily basis. When I drive on the road, it's underneath. So if I get stuck in the mud or a really dynamic off-road scenario, I'm going to have a really hard time unless I get my tires back up off the mud to get access to that tire. I actually have an off-road setup where it goes into the hitch and I have a swing-out tire. So if I know I'm going to expose myself into that environment, I'll deliberately put on that spare full-size tire. Have the right tires. Know you have a good spare. Know that your jack or your lift system that you're going to use is reliable, and break it out. Stare at it. Know where every piece is, exactly where it is. So if it's at night, you know where to go, where to grab it, and how to manipulate it in that environment. Now, that was just talking about tires. There's a lot to this. I do think that this is important if you're really trying to make sure that your vehicle is reliable. But the next couple of priorities, and I'm not going to go into everything, but I do believe having some type of a recovery kit and a winch is something that can get you out of situations. Again, I've used it in the past. This isn't just something on my truck to look good. This is an extremist situation where if I need it, I really, really, really need it. And I've got a 12,000 pound winch on my truck, a Warn. I'm not going to go buy a cheap aftermarket winch. Warn's been doing this. They've been in the game for a long time. They're reliable. I'm going to make sure that I have something that I can rely on without a doubt. I did all the wiring myself. And again, this is another part of it, is that if you're upgrading your vehicle, know how it's set up. Be intimate with where it is, because when the truck gets flooded or banged up or you do something dynamic, you want to know how to go back and fix the wiring or redo something if you absolutely need to. The last thing I'll say, without all the other details, is probably some type of a recovery board, shovel, that type of thing. So you have your recovery kit, you've got your I use Max Tracks, the military grade ones, and then I've got my shovel and my recovery kit. That will get you out of 90% of the scenarios out there, and I feel very confident about that. Try to buy good equipment, invest in the good equipment, and you'll get yourself out of these scenarios. So hopefully that helps you out. Again, I'm geeking out about this because it's something that I had a lot of fun with, and I'm actually looking forward to doing a little bit more off-road just for fun, to keep my skills sharp. It's like anything else, going to the range or going to do anything else. If you expect yourself to get out of these hazard situations, go expose yourself to those environments. This episode is brought to you by Horizon, an American Saga, from the Academy Award-winning director, Kevin Costner. You're not going to want to miss this one. It's raw, it's real. As I watched this and I reviewed this, it brought my heart into all of it. Right away, it's starting with faith. They had Psalm 23 in there. There was some very visceral experiences, and Kevin Costner did a great job with that. But the raw scenarios that these guys are in, I can't help but to run through what would I do in those scenarios, and hopefully share some of that with you guys as well. All right, guys, this 4th of July, make Horizon part of your celebration. Don't miss Horizon, an American Saga, with Chapter 1 being in theaters on the same day as Operation Red Wing, June 28th, and Chapter 2 in theaters August 16th. Join the Frontier Pass at fandango.com for exclusive content and tickets.
We don't just do the filmmaking. We do everything. We've taken a case study of over 30 projects that we've done over the past 15 years, and we put together what we believe is the most effective and efficient content funnel for brands. They need content on a daily basis. They need to be talking to authentic end users. We want your team to bring its most challenging problems and allow us and our team to apply our proven methods to your brand to take it to another level.
All right, good question. And let's get to the next one.
I want to create some go bags for my family. I have a wife and 2 kids. I have some family that's got some land that's, a couple of states away, but they're largely off grid. What should I have in my to-go bags?
All right, so he's got a family that he's trying to prepare. He's trying to take them off the grid if potentially something happens. So if he's not with them, or you're not with them, and you want them to be prepared as they go, first you have to ask yourself a really important question before we even get into the contents of the bags that you guys are building or think that you need to build at home. What is our expectation of who is using these bags? These potential bags that are going to help them enhance their capability, become a better asset. What's our expectation? Is my expectation for my children to be able to use ammo or firearms or the med gear that I'm offering to the best of their ability? Probably not, at least my younger children. So I want to create clear expectations first. So first create that expectation. And then once you set that expectation, I want you to be able to realize that what we're putting in our bags to prepare them to say, hey, babe, something bad's going to happen. I'm not going to be here. I need you to grab this bag and go to this land in 3 states away. Well, I need to make sure that I do my part in training her with what's in there, showing her the contents, and making sure that they all know how to use it. If that's the expectation, great, put whatever you want in there. If they're proficient at firearms, well, then I would say that ammo goes in there. But if my wife doesn't want anything to do with firearms and my kids are very young and they're not going to be able to handle a firearm, ammo is probably not the first thing that they need to put in there. Now, are they going to link up with you? Is that going to be a part of your link up plan? Are you going to be able to use what's in those bags later? Does ammo go in there anyway? These are things to think about. Now that we've created that framework with understanding your expectations, and I'm sure that's not how a lot of people think. It's just very, very broad or very clear cut, like, oh, you have this, this, and this. Well, open our mind a little bit about the expectations. That way we make sure we're setting them up for success. The next thing is, what do they need? What do they absolutely need that they could not live without? Medication for some people is a real thing. There are children that are taking medication that their lives depend on. So it's difficult and challenging, but you should be thinking about, do you have enough of a supply? Sort of something did happen where CVS and Walgreens shut down for a month. Are you going to be able to help them work through the supply? If it's truly life-threatening that they have that, I would think that that's where I would begin to make sure that those types of items go in the bag. What's unique to them and what do they absolutely need? Then, very simply, let's just talk about the hierarchy of needs. We got to make sure that we have food. We have to make sure that we have water. We want to make sure that we have life support. How can I sustain life if something does occur, if somebody does get injured? Does my wife have a base level of understanding of how to use the medical gear that I give her? Hey, babe, here's a tourniquet. Here's a blowout kit. Here's some gauze. I'm going to teach you how to use it. And again, I'm going to set my expectation that my wife is a nurse and she's going to crush being able to take care of our kids and herself. Again, I wanted to create that framework because I think it's important to know that, because once you do that, you start realizing like, oh, okay, I'm actually making sense now of what actually needs to go in these bags. What's the reality of them needing to get to a couple of states over, spend a couple of days? Maybe they stop in a hotel. You know, they still need water. They still need food. They still need medical equipment to be able to get them there. What other items are they going to need on their journey is a question that you have to ask depending on what your lifestyle is and what your expectations are. So great question. I hope that you guys got something out of that, being able to get some framework and to be like, okay, well, if I don't have any go bags, where do I start? We have one last question before we get into the scenarios. Let's hit it.
I live just outside a major city. And with everything that's going on in the world, I was wondering what your perspective might be on what I should do if there's a major terrorist attack involving, say, chemical weapons or dirty bombs.
Okay, so the question again is sort of in the same subject and vein of end of the world scenarios or a big scale terrorist attack. You know, we're talking about dirty bombs and chemical warfare, and that is something that, you know, we even talk about, and we're like, okay, what would we do in this situation? You know, how are we going to mitigate this risk? I can't help but to say it, guys, but faith has to be the element of what's going to occur afterwards. I have to have a level of trust in what God's asking me to do in these environments. Because if we're exposed to that type of an extremist scenario, sometimes there's really not much we're going to be able to do, especially if it's in the immediate area. You know, how do we break contact? How do we put layers in between us? How do we find environments, you know, when we talk about chemicals, the recycle button on your car, you know, that's one thing that I'm sure has been discussed in the past and that maybe you do or don't think about. But can I get to a vehicle, turn on recycle, at least mitigate a little bit of the air that's going to be circulating in the vehicle? You know, even tear gas. Let's talk about that for a second. I'm sure that if I had the vehicle pouring in air from the outside and there was a bunch of tear gas everywhere, eventually it's going to seep into the vents. So that is small things that you can do to continue to break contact outside of that environment, because it comes down to putting layers in between you and the threat. If I can get control of my family and then start putting layers in between me and them, I mean, there's not much that I'm doing ahead of time to think about how to prepare for this, right? Aside from having a whole biosuit in your car every day, which to me sounds ridiculous, you know, you have to think that if it occurs, I want to be able to continue to put layers in between me and the threat. Break contact, remove yourself out of the environment, get your loved ones, and create separation. You know, other than that, it's kind of like when I was overseas, I was like, okay, if a threat's going to happen, it's going to be right in front of me. It's going to be immediate. Then I need to figure out how to put myself and my family or my team in the best position possible. And that's really all I had on that one. Again, I'm sure there's a lot of good information out there. and I don't always have all the answers. And this is one that I could probably educate myself more on. You know, is it a realistic threat? And if it is, what could we do about it in a city scenario? And maybe I'll do some research and get back to you guys on that. But I appreciate you asking the question. All right, guys, that wraps up all the questions. Now, my favorite part, as always, the scenario breakdowns, which is brought to you by Snake Staff Systems. Hey, guys, what's up? This segment of Dangerous Questions is brought to you by Snake Staff Systems. If you guys have heard me talk about them before, they make low-profile tourniquets, and I always say there's no excuse not to have a tourniquet on you, and these guys nailed it with being able to have something on you at all times. Go check them out at snakestaffsystems.com. No excuses. Let's talk about the first one. These are a couple that I'm sure we'll see more and more, but they happen on a daily basis.
Cause and effect in Hollywood. Surveillance video shows a homeless person sucker punch an elderly man, then get tackled by a business owner.
My face doesn't hurt as much now. It's been a week and a couple days, but it's a little puffy, I guess you could say.
Tim Ratcliffe ran down the wannabe thief after they took the victim's phone and wallet.
As I was coming around the corner, he turned and hit me once in the face, which, you know, it is what it is. But I took him down and just kept him there till the police arrived.
All right, right on. Good on this guy for stepping up to do something about this. I mean, a lot of guys like this, criminals that are preying on vulnerable people, it's like, I'm glad somebody's stepping in to stop the cycle from happening, right? That might be the last time that he ever does that. Hopefully, that's our prayer, right? But when good Samaritans and good people step in, then good things are going to happen, right? And this could have been worse. This guy could have decided to punch him once and then just keep assaulting this guy to the point where he hurt him or killed him. And unfortunately, it happens every day all over the world. So I'm stoked that this guy did something about it and said, hey, listen, it's not going to be now. It's not going to be with me. And ideally, we stop these things from happening altogether, but he still stepped in to do something. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate people of action stepping in when people are helpless and they can't help themselves. You know, that's part of the warrior code, guys, helping people and protecting people that can't do it themselves. If we have that level of capability that God gave us, then we need to be stepping in. You know, from the standpoint of getting attacked, again, elderly or not, or younger or not, whatever the case is, a lot of people use this tactic. They'll come up, they'll ambush you, they'll sucker punch you. Keep your head on a swivel. And it even looks like the guy flinched up a little bit because he kind of saw it coming. So if you see the precursor, you could see his leg kind of move a little bit, like, oh, he knows it's coming, play it a little bit more, and then right when you see him flinch up and start to move. Is there anything this guy could have done? Maybe he was able to at least cover up a little bit to mitigate a little bit of that strike, which, again, awareness. He had his back up against that pillar, which wasn't a bad place to be. Maybe that's where he got seated. You know, again, when you're out in an environment like this, always try to dictate where you go and get seated. Don't ever feel like ashamed or embarrassed to ask. If they're going to sit you somewhere that you don't like, don't be afraid to be like, hey, thank you. Do you mind if I sit over there? I'll feel much better. Whatever you want to say. You could make up a ton of excuses, but obviously the best case scenario is that my back's up against the wall, which he did here. And I think it might have been even worse if that wasn't the case. But good on the guy for stepping up. And hopefully you guys learned a little bit from that breakdown. Okay, last scenario breakdown of the episode. Let's hit it. Okay, there's a gunman that comes in with the firearm, swinging it around. Okay, it looks like he's getting ready to reload here. So he had pepper spray. No, he was armed. All right, so that guy came around the corner. Now, we talked about this in a previous episode. He used dead space to get close. So this is another example of a guy stepping up when he was needed, when he was just going into action and doing something. I love that he had pepper spray. If he had that on him, good. If he found it from somebody else, good. He's being resourceful. But he used that dead space that I'm talking about to get close, to get into that reactionary gap, and he actually took advantage of this guy when he was what? He was reloading. He had his gun down. He was in a moment of pause, a little bit of a lull in the fight. And he's like, boom, he panned that corner, violence of action, sprayed the guy right in the face, and then closed the distance on that firearm. I mean, this is textbook forward progression to be able to mitigate this threat, to get on this threat, to crush this guy, to stop this guy from hurting anybody else in his environment. So this is a good rep to watch, guys. If we're trying to visualize, what would I do in this scenario where there was an active shooter? What would I do if a guy was around the corner? What would I do if there was glass doors, an alleyway, a door, a side door? How could I get close to this guy and stop this dude from causing any more harm to anybody else? I could watch this 100 more times just to get that visual rep in. Okay, he comes around the corner, pans the corner. You know, there might have been a little hesitation with like when he sprayed and pulled the trigger, but either way, he followed through. You know, did he have to get all the way around before the guy saw him? I probably would have panned a little bit less because it almost looks like he was trying to he had it in his mind, I'm going to spray the eyes. I think he could have still sprayed him from the back and still closed the distance. Also, from a training perspective, maybe if I was ready to spray and I panned the corner and I saw that he couldn't see me, I would have rather have had the element of surprise coming right up towards his back and grabbing the gun than getting around him to spray him in the face. No pepper spray at all, element of surprise, crash the gap, crush the dude, keep the weapon offline, and then detain him or subdue him, submit him, get the gun away, look for secondary threats, and end the fight so he can't harm or kill anybody else. Great rep, guys. I hope you visualize this and walk through this video multiple more times because it is good to watch. That wraps up this episode of Dangerous Questions. Thank you for all of the questions you guys keep submitting. They keep getting better. We're evolving here. Shout out to the team in the back. You know, I couldn't do it without the team back there, continuing to get this content up here for you guys, even, you know, ciphering through and going through all of the questions we're being sent. Walk away with some valuable knowledge. Take notes. Apply this stuff to your life. God bless you guys. This is Dangerous Questions. Peace.